It was a cold evening, December 12, 1907, when the Walla Walla Symphony Club Orchestra performed for the first time. The concert was here at what once was the Keeler Grand Theater. Edgar Fischer, one of the orchestra's founders, conducted a concert featuring selections from Mozart, Brahms, Beethoven, and more.
Today, our Walla Walla Symphony is the oldest continually operating symphony society west of the Mississippi River. It has delighted audience for 117 years. During that time, with the invaluable support of our community, the Walla Walla Symphony has been a driving force in music education, focusing a deep and broad impact on our kids and bringing in acclaimed musicians and artists.
And this year, the symphony embarked on a groundbreaking and unique search for its next musical director and conductor. Julie and I are so excited to be able to share with you what we've learned about this incredible hometown treasure throughout this process. So, join us for The Search, a hometown special. Like all other languages, music can be taught in two ways, by theory and practice. It possesses its own special literature of extreme richness and variety. The composer is an author of the same rank as the men of letters. The singers and instrumentalists are interpreters, like the reciter or the reader. One makes use of means, the other of sounds, but their aim is the same.
That quote leads the review of the first concert of the Walla Walla Symphony Club in 1907. According to the review in the Walla Walla Evening Statesman, the audience was most appreciative of the first appearance of the symphony.
The Symphony Club, having collaborated for a mere 4 months, presented a unique performance under the baton of Edgar Fischer. They performed 4 movements by individual composers, showcasing a unique approach in concert construction, which showcased the music's deep connection, symbolized by the composition's shared keys and emotional content.
All of that happened right here on this spot. Built in 1905, the only portion of the 1,300-seat Keeler Grand Theater that remains today is the stage house. The front of the theater was demolished in the mid-1950s, and the stage house was reworked into a garage. But it's still here, and it is fun to imagine people arriving here eager to hear the kind of music performed by their community for the first time.
Nowadays, we take music for granted. We have constant access to it in our pockets, through our media, and even in the many beautiful indoor and outdoor venues in the valley. But that wasn't the case in 1907, and the audience was delighted for the opportunity to experience the joy and creativity of music.
The symphony's commitment to the musical fusion, which was evident in its first concert, continues to guide its path into the future. Today, they actively seek innovative ways to embrace it, mirroring the spirit of their inaugural performance.
What that looks like has changed quite a bit in the last century, but the same spirit of creativity and culture is guiding the process of finding the Walla Walla Symphony's 15th musical director and conductor. Let's explore that legacy, an essential ingredient in the remarkable story of us.
So Richard, your connection to the Walla Walla Symphony goes back many years.
My late wife Barbara was president of the Walla Walla Symphony during the late 1990s. She introduced me to the concerts, and I'd always loved classical music, and I found that here there was an opportunity to get to know the conductor personally, to get to know the musicians in a way that was never possible in my hometown of Los Angeles. And I discovered the ways in which the symphony really elevated the quality of life for the entire community. in the late 1990s, I joined the symphony as a board member. Then in 2002, I moved to Chicago. I came back here in 2015 with my lovely wife, Marcia, and I soon helped the symphony with the staging of Anne Frank, the opera, which I was asked to help with because I had a background in teaching about the Holocaust. And then I was invited to join the board, and so I've been on the board since then, since about 2016 or 17.
So wonderful history, and the Walla Walla Symphony is the longest continuing symphony west of the Mississippi. Did I get that correct?
That is correct, since 1907. So it has kept performing through 2 world wars and 2 worldwide epidemics and depressions and other kinds of global catastrophes. It's been remarkable. And the women who started the Symphony Society because they believed that we needed to bring classical music culture to this neighborhood, I would imagine would be very pleased at its continuation.
And we do want to take a moment here to mention Yakov Bergman, who not only was the music director, but he was also your friend.
Yaki was a very dear friend and a beautiful person who did so much to expand this orchestra in terms of its repertoire, its guest artists, and the quality of its performances. And yes, a warm and lovely human being.
He and I would go and have 3-hour-long coffee or lunch, you know, just dreaming up the next big project. He was never without big ideas and big plans. He cared deeply about Walla Walla, and that was evident in the length of his tenure of 36 years.
Yes.
Really a remarkable thing for a small organization and a smaller community, particularly because he lived in New York and he came back and forth, you know, 5, 6, 7 times a year for 36 years.
Yes.
And he spoke so lovingly about this area to, you know, colleagues at other organizations that he helped support as well.
So I started, of course, when Yaki,
Yes.
Yakov Bergman, was our music director, and really loved playing under him. He had so much passion for the music and a very generous man.
When the phenomenal Yakov Bergman's tenure ended in 2023, our symphony began asking those questions on behalf of our community. Where did we want to go? After a thoughtful, strategic planning process, the committee posted an invitation to apply for the position on January 27, 2023. By March, they had received hundreds of responses from an incredibly robust, deep, and diverse applicant pool, consisting of well over 100 candidates from all over the world. The committee completed its work at the end of June, announcing 6 finalists: Nicholas Coilly, Antoine T. Clark, John Young-Sheik Conklin, Dina Gilbert, Kelly Kuo, and Fernanda Lastra. The 117th season, A Symphony of Possibilities, featured each of the candidates starting in November, and this season has simply flown by. In Bernstein's words, to achieve great things, you need 2 things: a plan and not quite enough time. So, how did you determine what this process would be like, you know, bringing in so many candidates?
Yeah, you know, it's been nearly an 18-month process so far, and we're not even done yet, which is really a wild timeline. Very atypical for, you know, kind of looking for a new person to do a job. So it's definitely kind of the slow and steady wins the race, and patience has been needed at every junction. But it was really something we wanted to share the story of what makes Walla Walla unique, what makes the symphony unique, and welcome a partner into that mix. And so to do so with such intentionality of even from posting the job to how we went through the interview process, you know, with over 130 candidates from around the world.
Yes.
To be able to whittle that down over the course of a couple of months to the 6 finalists who we're welcoming this season. So it's been quite the process.
Well, I've been chair or a member of many search committees in academia. I've never been part of a committee that has been such a pleasure to be part of. And it's been well organized from the beginning. So we had some guidance from a League of American Symphony Orchestras search handbook guide, and our CEO, Leah Wilson Velasco, consulted with CEOs and leaders of other orchestras, including other orchestras roughly our size. But we did several things in the process that candidates, including unsuccessful candidates, have been grateful for, that has made this really an enjoyable excursion for all of us. So we began almost 2 years ago with a decision that the search committee would consist of 4 representatives from the board, 4 representatives from the orchestra, that is 4 musicians, and then 4 community members, because we regard as essential the music director's role as an ambassador to the community, reaching out to the community, including parts of the community that maybe haven't found their way to the concert hall yet. And we have been embarked for several years on a major initiative to expand our audience, expand our repertoire, and reach out to the parts of the community that perhaps haven't found their way to the concert hall yet. So we had 4 community representatives. Then we spent several months designing the position description, the ad, the outreach.
As we think about who we are to this community and what we want to be, the opportunities are just endless. You know, what the performing arts can be, what music can be for people in a time of feeling rather disconnected from one another, a chance to come together and experience something. You know, no matter what you believe in, no matter how much money you have or what your background is or your education level, you can come in and be moved by a piece of music. And that's a really special and ever fleeting and hard to find those experiences.
We had applications from Japan, from Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Western Europe, South America, the Middle East.
Wow, go Walla Walla.
Well, I think it speaks well to the
Yes.
reputation of the Walla Walla Symphony and recognition by candidates that this was a job to be sought after. And several of them have also said that the way in which the position description was written made it clear to them that we were not just putting in buzzwords, but that we had a deep and sincere commitment, which came through in the language of that. And they saw what an extraordinary place this was and what our commitments are. So in terms of challenge, then sorting through the
133 down to 6.
133, first down to 18 with whom we had first stage interviews. And I'll tell you, Julie, that was difficult.
Wow.
Each candidate had to submit not just a CV and a letter of interest, which, by the way, they had the option of doing on video so that people who perhaps were more comfortable with that than with writing could do that. They also had to present a statement of musical philosophy, several sample concert programs that they either had conducted or would conduct if given the opportunity, and 3 videos of 3 minutes each. One of a rehearsal, one of a performance, and then a third one of their choice.
Just applying as I'm thinking about all those to-do lists.
That takes a significant commitment in itself, which we honored. So, you know, we read all 133. And the part of this that was most time-consuming, perhaps, but also the most joyful, was watching those videos. And
with the personalities coming out?
Yes, and getting to see what you don't see from the audience, the face of the conductor, right? From the musician's view.
We know the back of them quite well.
Right, so we see their expressions and their gestures and all of that. And there were pieces that I had never heard before that I couldn't stop listening to, even if the video went more than 3 minutes. There were also pieces that I had heard before, but never in quite that way. I couldn't stop watching. It was absolutely magnificent to watch and listen to. So then out of that, we had a series of meetings with our search advocate, Margarita Banderas, guiding us, making sure, again, that we were ruling people in and out for reasons directly related to the job qualifications. And we eventually settled on 18 interviews. And then from that, we narrowed down to 6. The caliber of these candidates has been one of the real pleasures of this process. They've been remarkable.
Becoming a musician is hard work. You must genuinely love the work to do well. It requires commitment, perseverance, collaboration, confidence, and humility, not to mention a cup or two of instinctive talent. The musician's journey is to internalize the magical dance between sound and silence. You play the flute.
Yes, yes.
And how long has that been your instrument?
Well, many decades. I started in 5th grade.
That's great. So
yeah.
you picked it up when you were an elementary student. You must have really liked the flute.
Oh, I loved it, yeah. And actually, I wanted to play the trumpet, and my mom said, no, that's going to be too competitive. You should play the flute. And she was kind of wrong, because the flute is a very competitive instrument.
That's fascinating. So what do you enjoy about the flute as an instrument?
Oh, I think it's the most vocal of all of the instruments, and after all, that's our goal as instrumental, to sound like the human voice and to have the same depth of expression. So, and it plays on the wind too. It's the production, the sound production is very similar to what vocalists do.
So as you're participating in symphonic works with your flute, what do you feel the instrument contributes to the sound of the orchestra?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, you know, I feel very fortunate that I have kind of in a leadership role. The flute, if you look at an orchestral score, the flute is the first thing you see.
Yes.
And it's very audible too, because it's at the top of the orchestra in pitch content. So anything I do is transparent and heard, and I just like to share my sound with the public.
And do you enjoy sometimes having, you know, the strings obviously make up a big part of the orchestra, but having these places where the flute really stands out, where it's really featured?
Oh yes, I just love, you know, the literature that includes flute solos, but you know, playing in the orchestra is collaboration too, so I enjoy, you know, playing with my colleagues in the Walla Walla Symphony, and sometimes they'll do something really beautiful, and my goal is to make it, you know, to one-up them, and wow, I'm inspired by that, I'm going to do the same thing.
So tell me about your history with the violin in your life.
Well, I started when I was 6 or 7 years old, and had a connection with the sound. I think there's something so intimate about string instruments that sit on our collarbone, and you get to feel those vibrations, and I just fell in love with making beautiful sound, and the vehicle that it is for connection with your friends and colleagues, and you get to communicate in such a sincere, intimate way, and I just have always been drawn to that.
What do you like best about playing your instrument?
For me, it was always a timbre thing, the actual sound of the instrument, you know, being able to play those low notes and kind of shake and rumble. You could always feel it for sure. But I always enjoy the aspect of the supporting role of the bass as well. The sound structure is built from the bass up, and so it was always that component of, you know, we carry those low notes, but it sets the foundation for the ensemble.
Yeah.
Have you ever sat here and wondered just what a conductor does? What impact do they have on what the musicians are doing? What drives them? What makes one excellent? From 1984's blockbuster film Amadeus, which brought the colorful story of the incredibly creative Mozart to life, to last year's Maestro, a biopic of the unique 20th century icon Leonard Bernstein, we've tried to answer that question. But not only for ourselves, but within the context of our own time.
It's been a really interesting and variable and exciting season, welcoming the candidates to our community, introducing them to the wonderful things that make Walla Walla such a unique and wonderful place to be. And seeing them make music with our musicians and the exciting concert experiences that they've been offering has just been amazing.
We had such a deep pool, it was hard to get down to these 6 because we had, I think, around 140 applicants, and many of those were terrific people. So I was really pleased with the pool that we had.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that, as a member of the orchestra, you are really looking for in a conductor?
How they use their rehearsal time, because the public may not know. They may think that we're rehearsing for weeks and weeks and weeks, but we only have 4 rehearsals. We come on Sunday and have 2 rehearsals Monday, and then the concert on Tuesday. So they have to put this program together very quickly and use the time very efficiently. So there's no time to kind of wallow in something and fool around, but they have to get right down to business. And I think that's the first thing, but you know, looking for a true musician who will push the orchestra into, you know, a new realm, and someone who looks beyond just the notes and playing accurately and making beautiful music.
Yes. So what kind of personality traits then do you find in a conductor who's able to relate both with the orchestra and with the audience who's going to come?
Well, I think the days of the dictator orchestra conductor are long gone. That's kind of a famous myth, but people like Toscanini earlier in the 20th century, and all of our finalists have been wonderful, warm people, as well as, you know, superb musicians. And the way they treat the orchestra, I think, is wonderful. If somebody makes a mistake, they don't make a horrible face about it, but they try to help that person.
Yes.
You know, and I think everybody's mission is producing the best music that we can possibly do.
It's been really eye-opening and has made me really grateful for conductors and the kind of process that they put themselves through, and I'm really grateful for all of our candidates, and you know, their process has been over a year long now at this point, and every one of them has brought such unique presence and brings things out of the repertoire and out of the musicians, and it's been really awesome to get to know each of them, and as a musician to kind of prepare yourself to receive and be open to whatever's on the podium. Yeah. It's been a privilege to get to know them.
Dizzy Gillespie once said it took him his whole life to learn what not to play. So what was that first moment when our candidates began to realize that they wanted to learn more about the dance? The moment when they knew that music was their calling?
Well, like most young people, they go where their friends go. And so from piano to cello to clarinet, finally to percussion, I was following my friends to, you know, be a part of the orchestra, to be part of the band. And what I noticed when I was in percussion, counting all those measures and waiting for my cues, I was observing the conductors and seeing what they were doing, and became very, very intrigued by what they were doing. So I eventually asked these people to teach me how to conduct, and I eventually got an opportunity to conduct, and from there, the rest is history, because I just caught the bug, and I wanted to do conducting for my life.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my childhood. My father was a blues, rock and roll, gospel musician. And someone asked me, well, that's a weird combination to have gospel and rock and roll. But yeah, my father grew up playing guitar. And so music was in our home all the time. And so I experienced music through the church, but through my father singing with him in his car, 8-track tapes.
Yes, I love it.
And then, you know, by 6th grade, I became interested in playing music and the clarinet. And like most children, we don't want to do the same thing as our parents. So
yes,
I had no interest yes, over the electric guitar. And I fell in love with that in middle school, and knew that I wanted to be an educator. That took me to studies in music education. And I didn't want to stop there. And I wanted to be a doctor of clarinet, and this love of conducting was a part of that as well. And later in life, I decided to pursue that as a career.
So it's a funny story. I grew up in a non-musical family. I lived in a neighborhood somehow that didn't have children my age, and so there were no playmates. So I was lacking social time. And so my mother, purely to socialize me as a child, put me in group piano and violin at 4. And it was not intended to be a career. It was truly just supposed to be, let's get John into something so he can do and interact with other 4-year-olds. And it just sort of took from there. It was something I continued through elementary school, middle school, and high school, and then it helped me get into college. And then from there, that's when I started thinking about conducting. And conducting is one of those things where it has to be 2 parts. You have to pursue it, and it also has to pursue you back. And I'm fortunate that that has worked out for me.
I mean, from the earliest memory I have, because I have 5 sisters and I'm ranked number 5 out of the 6. So for me, I was used to hear my sisters practicing their hour a day of piano, and really quickly our parents were also encouraging us to be part of different children's choir. So I would say that for me, from an early age, music was as important in school. And it was just a natural, like it was a second language, I would say, probably. And yeah, it's just from that on, though I didn't know I was to become necessarily a professional musician or anything. I was finding it intriguing that all my sisters knew right away, oh, I'm going to become a nurse, I'm going to become a pharmacist. And for me, it was like, I don't know yet. So I will keep continuing music. Until then, I found my way after being studying piano and clarinet to conducting, in which was really the eureka moment in which I thought, wow, this is really the combination of everything I love about music, and without having to necessarily just choose one instrument.
The lore goes that when I was around 4 years old and visiting the Tri-Cities with my parents, there was a department store called Griggs. And somewhere in Griggs, there was a tiny toy piano, plastic, I don't know, yay high. And I went right over to it and just started pounding on it. And my parents took that as a sign to buy an upright piano. And so there was an upright piano in our lives when we were in Hermiston. And I started out with a teacher there who was also a guitar player. I still have pictures of her, a young woman who must have been a teenager at the time, taught me how to read music. And then I went to a woman in Umatilla named Edna Chamberlain, and recently I found out some research that she had played for pianists like Alfred Cortot, a French piano master, and she was living in Umatilla. I think she moved there because her father, not her father, but her husband was a medical, in the medical profession there. And then my mom wanted my younger brother and I to start studying with the best piano teacher in town. And I believe I was 4 years old and my brother was 2. So she thought we were too young, but she suggested we start Suzuki violin with her son, who was in high school. And that's what we did. My mom's grand plan was that we would do so well in Suzuki violin that the piano teacher would then take us on as piano students. And that's exactly what happened. So
everything started with dance. I wanted to dance. So I started a school of dance at 8 and the conservatory at 10. And I had both in my afternoons for 10 years. So from 8 to 18, I had my mornings at school, my afternoons, arts, performance.
That sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
Moving instead of sitting.
Playing,
creating,
dancing, and that's I am very grateful for that. And the breaking moment for me was when I was at 15. I was singing as part of a chorus. We were singing, preparing Beethoven's 9th Symphony.
So something big and wonderful.
Big, and with orchestra, and the chorus sings at the 4th movement. So movement 1, 2, 3, I was just staring at the conductor from backstage, and I fall in love. At the moment, he was the husband of my piano teacher, so I knew him, and seeing him work with the orchestra and the sound, I know it's I remember right now my first rehearsal with the orchestra was whoa.
Are there a couple of composers that rise to the top for you?
Brahms for me was one of those composers which attracted my, got my curiosity about opening a score for the first time.
Yes.
Because I was hearing those sounds, I was, wow, this is so wonderful. How does that look on the page of paper? How did he orchestrated this? How can that sound so beautifully and all aligned, you know? And yeah, so I recall that Brahms was probably one of those composers who helped me getting that attention about the full orchestra repertoire. Beethoven, of course, I was just conducting Beethoven's 5th and 7th symphonies for a tour with the ballet in the United States, and I never get bored with those wonderful works. I love also Prokofiev, which I feel that like has a lot of personality and can really give a lot of characters to every line. I also love a lot contemporary music, and I would say I'm a big advocate of today's voices. So. Keiko Devaux, Camille Pépin, there's so many great composers that we need to understand that like are as talented as the big names we will remember. Actually, they will be the big names we remember in 100 years and 200 years. So I'm always excited about new music as well.
There's been a real push to sort of expand what we're playing, which has been really nice. We've been sort of waiting for the ability to get different things on stage, hear from different people, different cultures, different perspectives. And so now all of a sudden, it's almost as like the composers are in a conversation with one another. It used to be you would only hear conversations between like Beethoven and Mozart, which is great. They're fantastic composers and they belong sort of on the Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
But you know, that conversation, you've kind of heard it over and over. And so it's nice to hear a living Brazilian composer alongside converse with a Finnish composer who has passed away, and a composer, Florence Price, who we sort of lost but have now rediscovered.
Yes.
And so to have them talking to one another in the same space with the same orchestra is something that probably hasn't been done yet, I guess, I would think. I don't think these three pieces have been put together, so it'll be a unique experience.
We often think Copland as being Americana, which it is very much so, but
it's not the only American voice.
It's not the only American voice. You know, I think Florence Price, for example, we'll go back to her, she articulates that Southern black voice so well. William Grant Still is another composer that I've come to know and love. But yeah, you know, and then obviously you've heard of Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and that goes back to the 1700s, a black French composer. And that's one thing I like to try to stress is that classical music has never been just about one community. Even in Europe, you had Russians, you had Swedes, you had British, and that also goes to different cultures like Blacks and Hispanics and Asian Americans too. So it's a big community, and I think, you know, once people see that they fit into it, that helps to tear down the walls, and they can come into the concert hall and experience this wonderful music.
Oh, I mean, it changes from time to time. I'll become married to certain pieces and certain composers, but right now I'm really into the symphonies of Sibelius. Jean Sibelius, his symphonies are very mesmerizing, and they're very unusual, and the textures kind of melt from one place to another. Who is really like another composer I like, John Adams, an American composer who is more rhythmic in his approach, but also slowly transforms, just like Jean Sibelius.
Yes, well, sharing music from home is always a joy, because especially, well, Piazzolla is very close to my heart.
Oh.
He was born in the same city I was born.
Oh, wow.
Although he moved later to Buenos Aires, and he was in New York as well as a little kid. Yes, and the sound of his music, he was a revolutionary because he brought to the tango genre something new. He started incorporating orchestral instruments and also rhythms and mixing his training as a classical musician, because he was also trained as a classical composer.
Oh, really?
With tango, which was his essence. So you can see a fugue, for instance, in his music. and a fugue is a form that is from the classical world.
Yes.
So he was mixing both worlds. And for
I'm
tango,
going to listen different now.
yeah. Well, you can imagine for tango traditionals,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
for the tango people who were listening Piazzolla for the first time, they didn't like it at all. I mean, it was, he struggled a little bit to put his identity and his name as composer, recognized composer, renowned composer in the field because of all these frictions with the tradition.
So often we feel constrained by the trappings of attending the symphony. There are unspoken rules about what can or cannot be done, when to respond, when to be silent, how to dress, and how to speak. It can have its own secret code. But the truth is, we respond to music of all kinds that are played in the context of our own experiences. Music can be unsettling, unusual, educational, confusing, beautiful, grand, awe-inspiring, or overwhelming, but in every case, it speaks to our hearts and calls upon our common human experience. It elevates us and tells stories in ways that deeply connect us.
I want them to be present. You know, we live in a society where we're tethered through our phones and screens in general, and especially on the heels of the pandemic, the ability to connect with people in person. I realize it's 2 hours, but if you allow yourself to remember that people are there on stage making art for you, then wouldn't you want to be present for that part? Now I realize it's dark and cozy and it's late at night on a school night. So many things.
You don't want me to fall asleep when I'm there?
My wife might. You know, it's just one of those things that if we can make it possible for people to stay attentive and be present and show their appreciation and not feel any kind of fear for being out of place. I want them to feel like they belong in the concert hall, that they're not worried about being stared at because of what they're wearing or because they're clapping at the wrong time. You know,
there are some stigmas, aren't
there are some stigmas,
yeah.
but you know, gosh, if you think about it, in Mozart and Beethoven's time, people were applauding between movements. They were encoring movements of pieces that they were hearing for the first time. I don't know where this stigma of not applauding between pieces really started. It might have had something to do with when the conductor started appearing on the podium. Quite honestly, it's some kind of formal leadership thing where you're paying attention to someone who is leading and giving them their space to do their thing. But in any case, I want people to feel unencumbered with that. And if they feel like applauding, there are many moments in this program in the middle of pieces where you have, I think in any other circumstance, you would feel like you want to applaud right away.
Yes.
End of the first movement of the Dvorak Cello Concerto is very much that way. End of the first movement of the Shostakovich Symphony is very much that way. It's inviting people to react.
Yes.
And if people want to react, great. I'm not going to be there shushing them, turning them around, making them feel bad, because I'm very, very happy that they're there, that they're there on a school night, that they're braving the ice and snow on the streets, because they want to be a part of this experience.
I feel that, like, for me, music, when we are in times of performing, we get in that kind of sense in which we are so aligned exactly in the present moment. And when we are able to get this kind of cohesiveness and alignment on stage for a bigger purpose, which is then presenting a work we've been working on and we are loving, and we are like looking and are careful listeners to each other to like make sure that like we are really engaging with our colleagues on stage. I do feel that when we create such special moment, it naturally flows to the audience, which will then feel those powerful, I think, moments of unicity, I guess, and humanity, I guess.
Everyone together in
everyone
the moment.
together in a moment. And this, we felt, I mean, I felt through the COVID, without the audience, we were losing that aspect.
Yes.
So for us, it's kind of a cycle of energy, right? We are creating a kind of vibrancy on stage, but to make it really complete circle, we need to have the audience to receive it?
First of all, I think is new discoveries, something that maybe you didn't hear before, and something new to pay attention to. We all know Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and it's beautiful, but when you hear something for the first time that you never heard before, it's different, because the emotional context is different. We are like a canvas, white canvas, and it's how the music impacts on your soul. So I think I hope people like the program, and I hope they can discover the beauty behind these pieces.
Yes.
And every piece is different, tells a different story. So I hope people can navigate that storytelling along the program, and
be able to internalize that and
and enjoy, even if there is no like a resolution after the concert. Here is more about which emotional, how that impacted in your mood, even, right? If people listen, if people leave uplifted after the concert with a smile, that's, for me, it's the best gift. Because music is a gift, and music is something we have to offer, and something you as an audience member, me as an audience member, to accept it with open heart, and make and just leave the music, just allow the music to make the magic in yourself.
So the metaphor I use is like live sports. The reason we go to see an athletic event is because the outcome is not predetermined. We don't know what's going to happen. The same thing can be happening with an orchestra concert. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how that's going to impact you. You don't know how it's going to end. You're not going to be able to, you're going to feel the aural impact all around you. Plus, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's an unrepeatable event with those people, with that group, on that date, in that hall. That's something that's going to exist here. It's an experience that's going to exist here forever in your life.
What I try to do is make sure I'm presenting concerts that break down those barriers. That it's not elitist, that you're welcome whoever you are. And there's so many voices and there's so many composers out there that look just like you that are presenting music. And so my job is to help communities find those composers, connect with that music, and open the doors for communities to come into the concert hall.
These 6 unique and talented conductors each brought something special to our community this season. We've fallen in love with each of them. Most of all, they've reminded us that the best music has no barriers, and a collaboration of people can communicate stories through music and connection. The good news? You don't have to be in the in-group to love it. Classical music is for everyone. Despite the trappings of tradition, this process has done an exceptional job of reaching out and reminding us that there are still new things to be created together, new frontiers to explore, and new perspectives in the world of classical music. 117 years ago, Walla Walla Symphony broke new ground. Today, it remains committed to being creative, collaborative, and inclusive to bring music to our region.
And so now is the difficult decision of which person to select. There's the challenge, I think.
It is. After every performance, those of us on the search committee have had people come up to us and say, could you just hire this person now? Or people enjoying the process saying, could you just do this every year and not settle on somebody?
Oh, no, that's an interesting thought.
That would be too much work.
That would be way too much work, yes, I know. For the person who doesn't quite understand all the background work. Wow.
Thousands of hours. But yes, the candidates have not made it easy for us. They've all been wonderful in their own ways and shown genuine interest in our community too. So that's one of our criteria, of course. Interest in, commitment to the community and to what we're trying to accomplish. and wanting to know that they work in positive, encouraging ways with the orchestra and with the symphony staff and so on. So we will sit down with our criteria and we will talk about the strengths of each candidate and what they have to offer, and we'll talk about any concerns or weaknesses that each candidate has, and then try to weigh them in the balance. It's going to be challenging. Yeah. One of the things that we've been committed to is not discussing candidates comparatively before this point, because we want to avoid what's called an anchoring bias, where people have a first impression and then they get anchored into that and they can't move off of it. Correct. And so after each candidate has been to town, the search committee has met and discussed the strengths and weaknesses or concerns, if any, of that candidate. But as we got to number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what we have deliberately avoided doing is starting to compare them to each other. Okay. Because we don't want those comparisons to get fixed in people's minds too soon before we've seen everybody. Sure. So that's the process that we've quite intentionally withheld until now.
So this has been, for the search committee and for you, a little bit of a mental gymnastics that you've had to go through, and it's wonderful to hear how the process has been. So what do you think will be your takeaway from this experience, that you will have looked back on this time frame? As you look at that, what is something that will be something you'll remember?
One thing I'll remember is that a good process produces a good result. A well-designed process leads to a good result. The caliber of these 6 finalists is remarkable, and I know that I'm going to come away happy with our choice. The other things that will stay with me are the relationships forged within the search committee and the possibility for a group of people with a common goal to work collectively, cheerfully, selflessly together for a greater good. And that's been beautiful to see. And the hard work, the individual contributions of every member of that search committee are something I'll definitely take away.
Well, you know, I've been really pleased with the audience reaction, and I feel like the orchestra has come back. You know, we had a hard time during COVID, and the halls were a little small after that. I think people were worried about coming back into the public and sitting amongst other people, but there's just so much excitement in the audience, and for every single concert, so it's really pleasing.
Really a level of excitement, enthusiasm with everyone, I think, from the conductor candidates to the musicians to those who are there to experience. Sure. It's really been warm, really good.
And I think this process is fantastic for the orchestra, because we were used to one person on the podium for many years, even though we enjoyed him and appreciated him, but then we have to adjust to a new person every concert and figure out what their baton is doing and what they want, and adjust. And so that's been a real growth for the orchestra.
I can imagine it'll be a difficult decision, actually.
I mean, we were kind of hoping for a dud in there, you know, to at least rule one out. And so far, it's been incredible. The caliber of these people, the ideas that they have, the energy that they have, you know, how they've challenged our musicians, how they've welcomed and embraced our community. Like, we just couldn't have asked for a stronger candidate pool. It's been cool, very, very cool.
All along, as I've had the privilege of interviewing several of them, and each time I think, how are they going to make a decision? These are such wonderful people.
It's going to be a tough decision.
For sure. As far as the direction of the symphony in the future, I know part of that will depend on, you know, who you choose. But in your mind, what do you imagine? What do you vision?
Yeah, you know, we're still kind of rebuilding from COVID. So like rebuilding our audiences and welcoming people back into the hall is such a wonderful, warm, heartening experience to see the community responding like they have and coming out in full force for us. And I'm so grateful for that. I want to continue to see that joy and celebration being shared in the hall, our doors thrown wide open, and people from all different corners of our communities coming in and enjoying music together. I also want to see the music and culture of Walla Walla better represented in our organization, so we're talking about what that means and what that looks like, and it's definitely part of the equation as we're talking to the candidates coming in, engaging our youth, and connecting the kind of right hand and left hand of the organization of what's going on stage and off stage. So lots of big ideas and can't wait to have a partner to share that with.
The season is over and each candidate has been an incredible gift to our community. The search committee has completed their difficult work. After months of thoughtful consideration, the Walla Walla Symphony is pleased to present the 14th conductor of the Walla Walla Symphony, the excellent and vivacious Gina Gilbert. Over the years, Gina has conducted many major Canadian orchestras and orchestras in the United States, Colombia, Spain, France, and Japan. She's known for her contagious enthusiasm and audacious programming and attracts critical acclaim for her energy, precision, and versatility. Gina is passionate about communicating with audiences of all ages. She's committed to broadening the appeal of classical music through innovative collaborations. She's naturally curious about all musical genres and willing to think about ways to make classical music accessible to everyone, which has sparked incredible collaborations worldwide. She has reached thousands of children by conducting 101 workshops encouraging participation and creativity. Gina Gilbert makes classical music accessible to all of us, which has been one of the core values of the Walla Walla Symphony since its inception. What a gift our musical director and conductor, Gina Gilbert, is for a community inspired by our rich and vibrant history and committed to a rich and vibrant future. We can't wait to see what comes next.
It all started that December night here at the Keeler Grand Theater, and the journey from here
to here, its home in Cordner Hall on the Whitman College campus, is central to who we are. Although the location, people, and even the music have changed, the symphony's purpose and mission have remained the same. As Sarah Dressen wrote, music is the great uniter, an incredible force, something that people who differ on everything and anything else can have in common. The Walla Walla Symphony is a favorite in this community. As we learn and grow together, we come together to celebrate the joy of the common language of music. What an incredible journey it has been, and we can't wait for the next chapter. See you next time on another Hometown.